At the SIG Next event I was recently at, I had the opportunity to interview Cohen, the CEO of SIG Sauer. And I have no doubt at the time that I record this, there are those of you who want me to ask him about the current P320 issues that are going on right now. And I strategically chose not to because it is an ongoing lawsuit and there's not a lot he's going to be able to say about it. Now, as a competitive shooter who's competed alongside a bunch of casual law enforcement officers and had to disqualify some of them, I'm not real sure where I land on what the state of affairs actually is with all of this stuff. So I'm just refraining from comment and letting it run its course on all of this stuff. And plus, James Reeves kind of already carved out that corner with his time with Ron, so took it in a different direction. In the video, we discuss the synergy of performance civilian shooting with warfighting technology. We talk about hammers versus strikers. We talk about the innovations in targetry and the ammunition that they are messing around with, and just what's next as far as where we're going in the industry. And there is some facts in there about red dot adoption at the law enforcement level that is going to be really interesting to a lot of you, I have no doubt. This is a long one. You could probably listen to it in your car on the way to work or something like that. So get comfortable and hear what Ron Cohen of SIG Sauer had to say. So I am sitting down with the man himself, Ron Cohen, the CEO of SIG Sauer.
That is correct, apparently, yeah.
All right. Well, I do want to apologize. I didn't realize we'd have this opportunity to sit together. I do have a tuxedo t-shirt back at the hotel. I can go change into that if you want, or
I don't own a tuxedo, so it's going to be hard to match.
Well, you know, tuxedo t-shirts are a good middle ground. You can check them out there on the internet. Just kind of a warm-up question, and this is a multiple choice one, so it's really easy. Are guns cool? Option A, yes. Option 2, hell yeah, brother.
Hell yeah, brother.
Okay, now do it with a Macho Man Randy Savage voice.
Hell yeah, brother.
Good. I see you're a man of taste. So we're actually sitting in the SIG Experience Center, which honestly is the nicest gun club, gun range that I've ever experienced. Is this going to continue to just be located in New Hampshire, or do you guys have plans to plant these across the country?
That's, it's a tough question to answer. We started this a couple of years ago to be, I'd say, the window to SIG, to allow people to experience SIG, the passion, the people, the product. And this year, we're expecting here 150,000 people.
Okay.
The complaint is that it's far. It's in New Hampshire. And there is a lot of pressure to copy it into a few other locations, maybe in Florida one, maybe in the West Coast, somewhere in the South, in the center. So I think we're going to dip our toe into that one step at a time. Probably in the next couple of years. Okay. It's,
I mean, just sitting in the Club 1751 we're in right now, there's a lot of really cool, there's the millionth P320 and the P365 and some very significant guns in SIG's history. Optics aren't really what SIG has been traditionally known for. People think of small arms typically when they think of SIG, but I would say that's starting to be less the case with the NGSW and the RM17 optics. And I got a chance to see your old new facility, which is now apparently the old new facility, because there's a new facility. So you guys are taking that seriously. With that said, do you see optics continuing to push into all facets of the small arms market, specifically in the civilian market and on pistols? What trends are you seeing there?
When we grew up, optics was something that few had. And over time, it became part of hunting. But the math in the United States is that there's about 2 million to 3 million long guns sold a year in the commercial market, and about 10 million pistols a year, handguns. So if we would be sitting here in 2015 and I talked to you about pistol optics, you'd laugh at me and say, yeah, 2 a day. The reality is, when you look what happened since 2015, it's been an amazing journey that was very fast. Today, putting a red dot on a handgun seems very natural because it changes the experience of shooting. It allows people of an older age to have an easy time with the shift in eyes, and to put people that are new to shooting, it's an instant ability to learn how to shoot, and it's also a tutorial of what you're doing wrong when you're shooting.
Yeah.
To me, when I put a red dot on, I know when I'm making a mistake. I could see the dot moving. When I'm jerking the trigger.
Right.
I'll bet you that by 2030, 75% of handguns will come.
So I guess 5-6 years. My math's not so good. Yeah.
In 2020, I bet with our law enforcement side that by 2025, 50% of cops will have a red dot. We beat that in 2023.
Oh, wow.
So we exceeded that. I will tell you furthermore that by 2030, a lot of people will not have iron sights on their handgun, just like majority of the people do not have iron on their rifle. My kids in the service do not know how to shoot with an iron sight on their rifle.
Does that make you sad, or are you happy for the change? I mean,
well, I'd like them to learn, and I told them they should, just like I wanted them to learn how to drive stick.
Right.
But they kind of don't get that.
And then they never see a stick shift car, so.
Exactly. So I think that the evolution of optics by 2030, 35 is that the focal point is mostly on the pistol, and the transition on long gun, it's electronics and disturbed reticles, which will radicalize the current technology.
And kind of playing off that, because I think this falls into the same group, is that you got the T300 and the optical kind of target system, which is, I mean, targets have been the same targets for 25, 30 years. I mean, as far back as people were shooting cans off of fence posts and stuff like that. Do you continue to think that there's space for innovation? And because I mean, you have the SIG Academy and stuff like that. Are you guys I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do. We just saw the Flyer Defense thing come out and have the remote targeting system.
You know, at SIG, we try to ask ourselves a question: what are the big problems that exist? We asked that question 3-4 years ago in the consumer market. And we identified something that's really troubling, is that there's 100 million of us that have a firearm. 100 million of us. But only 10 million of us shoot on a regular basis. Another 10 shoot 2 or 3 times a year. And the last 10, another 10, i.e. to get a 30, shoot once a year. So think about it. 100 million people have guns. Barely a third actually shoot. That means that 70 million Americans have a gun and don't shoot guns. I consider myself as a guy that shoots, but the reality is in most locations, unless you're a competitor, you go into a range, you aim at usually paper, you shoot a mag or two, and I'm not as good as you, so after about 10 rounds, I'm kind of starting to lose where my hits are. By the time I dump the second mag into it, I'm not sure where I hit. My buddy that came with me to shoot is shooting just next door, but I can't see him because we're in a lane. So it's not a sport that we share. Yes, there's a very small percentage of people that compete, but the majority of us 30 million Americans actually shoot. We don't compete. So that's very troubling. If you take all the ammunition in America that's sold in a year in the handgun market, divided by the 100 million users, it's $4 a year, which means that people do not shoot. 4 years ago, my daughter took me to a place called Top Golf. And I don't play golf. And I said, I don't want to go. She forced me. We went up and we had the time of our life and we stayed there for 2 hours because there's a measurement capability. So we started to think that we can change how people look at guns aside from self-defense tool, but more of our golf, our fun, our way of life. Let's have fun with it. To have fun, you need to combine a little bit of a Peloton experience where you can see results. Then you need a Facebook because we want to share.
Right.
And then you need Netflix because you need to train. You need to get better. I want to beat you. I could train by myself. I'm not sure I could beat you. So when you look at forces in the industry that could do that, it's companies that are willing to look into the long term, companies with a strong brand, companies that have an academy, that have 100 instructors. So we decided, let's create that ultimate app of let's be able to shoot a gun. Let's record the shots from our cell phone or into a device that actually allows us to game the gamification of shooting. If we don't feel like we're good, we could randomly take a class online. We can collect the data. I could show you that you live in the West, I live in the East, my results, and I can compare myself to myself. So we are starting to launch something. We're obviously perfecting it in our academy, in our ranges, in the SIG Experience Center, but we view it as our responsibility to help change the industry, to make it fun.
So you touched on competitive shooting, and that's something obviously near and dear to my heart. And walking around talking to your product managers, I couldn't help but notice pretty much all of them that I spoke with are competitive shooters as well. And I realized SIG's primary business is small arms weaponry for, LEO military. But I'm curious what the kind of the performance civilian shooting seems to be bleeding into the, I guess I'll just call it warfighting, law enforcement kind of side. And there, I would say, seems to be more focus on the synergy that those two provide. And I was curious if you could talk through kind of your reasoning as far as how the civilian performance side with the Maxes and Daniels and Lenas and now Masons into the serious use.
I don't see it as separate worlds. They're 100% connected. If you go to a guy like Daniel, his passion is teaching military special operations unit, obviously Max, and the world of competitive shooting is a tremendous support for actually the military. That handgun is not necessarily their first priority. It's a secondary weapon. They learn from each other. And the fact that it's SIG, you've got about a third of our guys are ex-military. A lot of the ex-military guys are also civilian shooters, or our civilian shooters are influencing law enforcement military. It's a perfect blend. We don't seem to have a barrier between them. And the SIG style is camaraderie and willingness to learn and to get better. And it just, I don't see a separation. I think each world helps the other part. And we love it that way. The competitive shooting part of SIG is, we have an academy. In it, there's 100 instructors. We live, breathe, and that's what we do all day. There's so many competitions here, classes, and you see civilians and law enforcement military in the same class or as instructors or students. I don't distinguish between them. They each support the other category.
This one's kind of topical. So at the SIG Next event, you are releasing the P320 Flux Legion, and there was a recent ruling from the courts which kind of changed the stance of the ATF on the brace. Is that a category and a style of firearm? Like, number one, what are you seeing with the agencies you guys work with as far as the use of that firearm? And do you see on the civilian front that becoming a more prevalent format of firearm?
I think the Flux Raider fits into a SIG DNA of pushing boundaries and innovating usage. To some extent, like the 365 created a category or changed the category of CCW. What the Flux Raider has the ability to do, and it's going to reflect very soon also in law enforcement, is to provide you what I would call a subgun or rifle in a handgun package, which A, improves your ability to hit a target, B, it's easy to conceal, so security forces, law enforcement, and civilians will gravitate to whatever is easy. The modularity of the SIG system, the ability to reconfigure it, to add optics, to strip it from the device, are basically driving it to be that middle category between when you need a full-blown rifle caliber, and when you need a pistol caliber, and it extends your range, gives you so much more capability. So I think it's going to have a profound influence on our fun shooting on one side and on law enforcement and some military as well.
I had never shot one before today, and that's a really fun. Like
you enjoyed it.
I did, yeah. The double mag drop thing, because the way the foregrip, not a foregrip is set up, the magazine storage thing.
It's incredible. The first time I did it, whoa, what happened here? It's
very intuitive. Everyone was picking up and ripping it. So I think that's definitely an avenue for what I'll call higher caliber handgun rounds for new shooters as well.
I'd say that SIG always gravitate to something that could change the world. And this is one of those things that to us could be a change agent of how people perceive guns.
For sure. So at the SIG Next events, you're launching 2 new striker fire handguns, not counting the Flux Legion, and 2 new hammer fired guns, the 226 Reserve and the 226 40th anniversary. Where do you see kind of the striker hammer setup currently, and where do you see it kind of going? Do you think it's going to continue to be strikers rule the day, or hammer's going to make a comeback? What's your take on that?
I would say that if you'd asked me 5-7 years ago, I'd say that the hammer category will diminish more and more every year, but I have the wisdom of a few more years. I would say that they're going to learn how to live together. And we love different types of product, and they feel different. And it seems like we'll be able to preserve hammer guns and striker guns to live in harmony together.
What's your personal preference?
It's like I have 4 kids. You're going to ask me which one I love.
That's exactly what I'm doing. Yes.
So I think it depends. Some days the 226 is single action is near my bed. Some days it's the macro comp. So I don't know. It depends. For me, it's the mood. There's something special about a 226 that maybe because I started with a 226 back in military time. It's just, it's what you remember as the gun.
I agree. The 226 is a special gun that, like, it's not as, I won't say relevant, but prevalent. When you go to the range for your first time, people are handing you striker guns. So, like, you should check this one out.
I hand my kids a hammer gun.
Yeah.
I want them to understand how it functions.
What I like about the 226 is it is like very soft shooting, because it does have a little bit more rotation and climb, but it doesn't hit you in the hands as hard. So I find it's great for new shooters personally. Since you guys are all over the world, how do you see U.S. gun culture as it relates to kind of the markets internationally? How do we fit into kind of the international picture as far as you see it?
Look, if you separate the markets between consumer, law enforcement, and military, on the consumer side, it's driven primarily by legislation or laws in the various countries. There's definitely, let's look at what the US are doing, because that's the center of the gun world. For consumers, the European culture lives off that, the American consumer. So we see whatever is popular here starts to migrate over there. On law enforcement and military, it's obvious that anything that's key here is successful overseas. I travel the world quite a bit. SIG operates in 80 countries around the world. And it's basically, if it worked with the US military or whatever part of it, they want it because it's the best. So there's no doubt, and especially in times of conflicts right now in the world, even more so, the US military is the golden standard of testing and acquisition of weapons. And there's tremendous trust to that process that happens in the US, which we obviously benefit from because we've been successful in the US.
On the US side, with that kind of gun culture, and this is a two-stage question. Are there any trends that you see in the U.S. market that you wish would kind of disappear? And the other side of that is, what are you seeing kind of emerging in U.S. gun culture that you're excited about and hope continues to expand?
What would disappear? The hate against people like us that love to shoot.
Oh, that's a fair one. That was an easy one, I guess.
Because when you look at the average gun user, we're the best of what this country has to offer. And it's a shame that we have a certain stigma, but I don't know if that will disappear anytime soon. As far as the trends that happen here, I think the culture of enjoying to shoot guns as a sport is starting to grow more than it was 10 years ago. We have events that we call it Shoot SIG, and we're starting to get more and more people to come to these events. Not a shooter like yourself, maybe, that's a competitive shooter, but a shooter like me that's willing on a weekend to go for a couple hours. He doesn't want to be compared to Rambo. He just wants to, and Max Michel and Daniel and Lena, he just wants to have fun. So shooting is starting to transfer itself from home defense to a fun sport. And I think if we bring technology and more fun gamification to it, it will continue to grow. And I'm very excited about it. The technology around guns, the red dot revolution, I think makes it such that anybody can learn how to shoot a gun and that's why we are pushing in that direction. I think that's going to grow and grow, and it will influence the rest of the world. We see more competitive shooting in countries that we're in than I saw a decade ago.
For sure. So 2 more questions, because I realize we're running up on our limit here. The first one is kind of open-ended, and I realize you can't say too much, but if you think about where we are in the industry right now, with where handgun technology and rifle technology has gotten to with optics and all that kind of stuff, we have pushed the limits of what was possible. I mean, using stuff like different types of compensation of using the gas from the ammo to make the gun softer and more pleasant shooting, to, you know, the SIG lock integration of a weapon system truly being built around an optical sight. Where do we go from here? Like, what's next? Like, do you see the ceiling approaching, or do you guys still have some tricks up your sleeve for the future? I mean, how much more can we do with center-fired ammunition?
I gotta tell you that it never ceases to amaze me how innovative our industry is. And if there was a change that I'm proud of, is that since 1840 up till 3 years ago, ammunition stayed the same. Case from brass, a primer, powder, and a projectile. And that limited what you can do. You can grow it, you can make the diameter bigger, but that's all you can do. So if we are asking about changes that will come, the next decade will be the most unique decade in my life. I think we're starting a revolution because of ammunition. The hybrid shell that SIG is patented enables us to change 180 years of technology. We could put so much more pressure in a case, which means that you don't need to grow a shell in order to give more performance. And that will apply to military and hunters as well, self-defense too. So in the next decade, there's going to be a major revolution of ammunition. What you see in this day or two is the beginning of that, the 277 Fury, or the 6.8, which is the military iteration of that. The lethality on one side, the ability to make smaller guns that could be dramatically more powerful, is a revolution that did not happen in my lifetime. It's now starting. We are in year 0. In the next decade, it's going to be a storm throughout the world.
And final question, what question do you wish people would ask you?
I think that people like to ask a lot about the products or this military contract or that military contract. And I'm the most humbled by who I'm with. When I drive home on a Friday night and in my head try to summarize the week, I feel blessed to be with exceptional people, whether they are ex-military people or just people that love our world of guns. I'm lucky. My wife asked me, after 20 years, how can you be so happy to be at work? What makes you still happy? I said, you know, if you were with the people that I'm with, you would understand. I am fortunate to be with exceptional people. A day like this showcases it, and that's something that's hard in an interview to explain. You have to witness it by engaging them, and hopefully today, tomorrow, you have that opportunity. That's the biggest thing in my life, the passion of working with incredible people.
Well, Ron, I appreciate your time. Thanks for sitting down with me, and thanks for inviting us out to New Hampshire to enjoy all that SIG has to offer.
Well, you're welcome here. Continue to win in competition against us.